The Kethmori had always been known for their delicate beauty across the galaxy. Their crystalline structures caught starlight and reflected it in rainbow patterns that mesmerized other species. For thousands of years, they had been the artists and philosophers of the Galactic Coalition, creating sculptures and music that moved even the most hardened warrior species to tears. Their homeworld, Valdris Prime, was considered one of the most beautiful planets in known space. But beauty meant nothing when the plague came. Elder Sydhra stood at the observation deck of what had once been the planet's most prestigious medical facility, watching the last transport ships of the Galactic Coalition disappear into hyperspace. Her crystalline form, once brilliant blue like a perfect sapphire, had dulled to a sickly gray. The plague that ravaged her people didn't just steal their lives. It stole their very essence, turning their beautiful crystal bodies into brittle, colorless husks. "They're all gone now," whispered Healer Mordun, his voice crackling like broken glass. At barely 300 years old, he was young for a Kethmori, but the plague had aged him rapidly. His once vibrant green crystal skin now looked like clouded emerald. The Coalition had tried to help at first. When the plague emerged 6 months ago, they sent their best doctors, scientists, and researchers. The Zephyrians brought their advanced medical technology. The Thraxians contributed their bioengineering expertise. Even the cold and logical Nexari offered their analytical capabilities. For weeks, they worked tirelessly to find a cure. But the plague was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It attacked the unique crystalline biology of the Kethmori in ways that no other species could even begin to understand. Their crystal-based cellular structure, which had evolved over millions of years to create their stunning appearance and natural artistic abilities, became their weakness. The disease spread through harmonic resonance, using the very vibrations that allowed the Kethmori to communicate through crystal song. Each infected individual became a carrier, spreading the plague through their natural biological functions. Within days of the first outbreak, entire cities fell silent as their population succumbed. The Coalition tried quarantine procedures, but nothing worked. The plague seemed to adapt to every countermeasure. Worse, some Coalition species began showing signs of a similar infection, though it affected them differently. The Zephyrians' aerial chambers began to collapse. The Thraxians' exoskeleton started to crack and splinter. Fear spread faster than the plague itself. "We cannot risk our own populations," announced Coalition leader Vextar during the final emergency session. The hologram of the massive Thraxian flickered in the council chamber as other species leaders nodded in agreement. The Kethmori plague represents an extinction-level threat to all crystalline and calcium carbonate-based life forms. Elder Sydhra had attended that session virtually, her weakened state preventing physical travel to the Coalition capital. She watched as species after species voted to abandon her people. The motion passed with only 2 dissenting votes, both from species too small to matter in Coalition politics. "We will establish a quarantine zone around the Kethmori system," Vextar continued, his mandibles clicking with what passed for sympathy among his people. "Emergency beacons will be deployed to warn all vessels away. We deeply regret this necessity, but the survival of the galaxy takes precedence." And just like that, the Kethmori were alone. The quarantine began immediately. Massive warning beacons were placed at every hyperspace entry point to their system. Coalition ships established patrol routes to ensure no one entered or left. Within days, the flow of supplies, medicine, and hope stopped completely. Sydhra turned away from the observation deck and walked slowly through the medical facility. Emergency power kept only the most critical systems running. Life support would last perhaps another month before failing completely. The facility that once treated minor injuries and routine illnesses now served as a hospice for an entire civilization. In the children's ward, young Kethmori lay in crystalline beds designed to resonate with their natural frequencies to promote healing. But healing was no longer possible. Their small forms, once brilliant with the pure colors of youth, had faded to pale shadows. Some still hummed weakly, their crystal song reduced to barely audible whispers. Caretaker Jilnara sat beside a cluster of younglings, her own form showing the advanced stages of the plague. Her song, once powerful enough to shatter stone or heal wounds, could barely produce a gentle lullaby. "Tell us the old stories," whispered little Kyofen, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Which story would you like to hear?" Jilnara asked, settling her weary form more comfortably. "The one about the singing mountains," said another child, "and the crystal cities that touched the stars." Jilnara smiled, an expression that caused her facial crystals to refract light in patterns of warmth and love. "Long ago, when our people first learned to sing, the mountains of Valdris Prime sang back. Our ancestors discovered that their crystal formations could harmonize with our voices, creating music so beautiful that it could be heard across the system." As she spoke, HFY moved through the facility, checking on other patients. In the adult wards, philosophers and artists who had once debated the meaning of existence now lay quietly contemplating their own mortality. The plague had taken their ability to create, but not their ability to think and feel. "Elder," called out Vashtor, a renowned sculptor whose crystal gardens have been visited by millions of tourists from across the galaxy. His form was almost completely gray now, but his mind remained sharp. "Have you heard anything from the outer monitoring stations?" SYEH shook her head sadly. "The last communication was 3 days ago. Station Epsilon reported all personnel are showing symptoms. They estimate perhaps a week before complete system failure." The monitoring stations had been their last link to the outside galaxy. Placed at the edge of their system, they serve as both early warning systems and final repositories of Kethmori culture. If those stations fell silent, their civilization would effectively disappear from the galaxy's consciousness. "We should prepare the cultural archives," suggested Mordun, who had followed SYDH through the facility. "If we're going to fade away, we should at least leave something behind for future archaeologists to discover." It was a bitter thought, but a practical one. The great libraries of Crystal Song, containing millions of years of Kethmori history, philosophy, and art, needed to be preserved in formats that other species might eventually understand. Without their biological ability to read crystal harmonics, much of their culture would be lost forever. Begin the conversion process. Audio formats, visual records, anything that might survive. She paused, looking around at the dying facility. "At least our legacy might live on, even if we cannot." Days passed in growing silence. The background hum that had always filled Kethmori cities, the sound of millions of crystal beings living and working together, grew fainter each day. Power grids failed as maintenance workers succumbed to the plague. Communication networks went dark as operators lost the strength to maintain them. In space around Valdris Prime, the orbital cities that had once housed billions of Kethmori began to drift out of position. Their crystal superstructures, no longer maintained by their inhabitants, started to lose coherence. Some broke apart completely, creating beautiful but deadly fields of crystalline debris. The Coalition monitoring posts on the quarantine perimeter reported these developments with cold, scientific precision. Orbital habitat Zephyr 7 has lost structural integrity. Communication silence continues across all Kethmori frequencies. No signs of organized activity detected planet-wide. But then something unexpected happened. On the 7th day after complete communication blackout, the long-range sensors at Coalition Post Delta picked up an anomalous reading. A small vessel, definitely not of Coalition design, had appeared at the edge of the quarantine zone. It broadcast no identification signals and responded to no hails. "Unknown vessel. You are entering a restricted quarantine zone," transmitted the post commander, a stern Nexery officer named Zixpol. "Turn back immediately or face interception." The small ship continued its approach, seemingly oblivious to the warnings. As it drew closer, sensors revealed its unusual design. Unlike the sleek curves preferred by most coalition species or the geometric patterns of the Nexari, this vessel appeared to be built from angular, almost primitive-looking components. It had clearly been designed by a species unfamiliar with standard galactic engineering principles. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, "I'm detecting life signs aboard the unknown vessel. The readings are strange. I've never seen biosignatures like these before." Zixpol's multifaceted eyes focused on the displays. The life signs were indeed unusual, complex thermal and electrical patterns that didn't match any known species. "Prepare interception course. We cannot allow unknown contamination vectors to approach the infected system." But before the coalition ships could respond, the small vessel did something extraordinary. It accelerated directly toward the quarantine beacons, broadcasting a simple message on multiple frequencies. "This is the Earth vessel determination. We are responding to the distress call from Valders Prime. Please do not interfere. Earth." The name meant nothing to Zixpol or any of his crew. They quickly consulted the galactic databases, searching for any reference to this unknown world or its inhabitants. The search came back negative. No species called humans were registered in coalition records. No world called Earth appeared in any star charts. "Unknown vessel identifying as Earth origin," Zixpol transmitted. "You are not recognized in coalition databases. This system is under strict quarantine due to an extinction-level plague. Approach is forbidden." The response came quickly. "Coalition vessel, we understand the risks. We have volunteers aboard who have studied your transmitted data about the Kethmori plague. We believe we can help. Request permission to proceed." "Negative," Zixpol replied immediately. "No exceptions to quarantine protocols. Turn back now." The human ship paused in its approach, holding position just outside the beacon perimeter. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, it began broadcasting on Kethmori frequencies. Somehow, impossibly, the aliens aboard had learned to reproduce crystal song harmonics. "People of Valdres Prime." The message sang in pure, clear tones that resonated perfectly with Kethmori biology. "This is Dr. Sarah Chan of Earth. We have received your cultural transmissions and learned of your situation. We are coming to help. Please prepare medical facilities to receive assistance teams." The message reached the few remaining Kethmori monitoring stations still operational. Elder Iswydhra, who had been preparing for the final shutdown of their civilization, received the transmission with disbelief. Someone out there, some unknown species, had not only learned their language, but was offering help. "How is this possible?" whispered Healer Mordun as they played the message again. "No one outside our species has ever mastered crystal song." The Coalition's best linguists spent decades trying to learn basic phrases. But the evidence was undeniable. The humans had somehow deciphered their complex harmonic language in a matter of days, and were speaking it with near-perfect pronunciation. More than that, they were risking their own lives to offer assistance when the entire galactic community had abandoned the Kethmori to their fate. Iswydhra made a decision that would change everything. Using the last of her strength, she activated the planetary communication array and sent a reply. "Dr. Chin of Earth, we welcome any help you can offer. Our people are dying, and we have little time left. Please be careful. The plague is extremely dangerous." Back at the quarantine perimeter, Zixpol watched in alarm as the human vessel suddenly accelerated toward the beacon line. "All ships, intercept the unknown vessel. Do not allow contamination breach." But the small Earth ship was faster and more maneuverable than the Coalition had expected. It weaved between the warning beacons with precision that suggested either incredible piloting skill or advanced navigation systems. Within minutes, it had passed the quarantine perimeter and was heading directly for Valdres Prime. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, "the unknown vessel has breached quarantine. Should we pursue?" Zixpol considered his options carefully. His orders were clear: maintain the quarantine at all costs. But pursuing the humans into the infected system would require his ships to potentially expose themselves to the plague. After a moment's hesitation, he made his choice. "Negative. Maintain perimeter. log the breach, and report to Coalition Command. The unknown species has made their choice. As the human ship disappeared toward the dying world, Zixpol couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and horror. These humans, whoever they were, had just committed what most of the galaxy would consider suicide, entering a plague zone to help a dying species they had never met. It was either the most noble gesture in galactic history, or the most foolish. On Valdres Prime, Elder Switechera watched through the medical facility's sensors as the small Earth vessel entered their atmosphere. It descended through the Crystal City's debris field with careful precision, avoiding the larger fragments that could damage its hull. Its destination appeared to be the main spaceport near the medical complex. "Prepare what reception we can," Switechera told Mordun. "If these humans are truly here to help, we owe them our best efforts in return." As the human ship settled onto the empty landing pad, its engines powering down with unfamiliar sounds, the few remaining healthy Kethmori gathered to witness this unprecedented moment. An unknown species, unregistered by the galactic community, had crossed the stars to offer aid when all others had fled. The ship's airlock cycled, and for the first time in galactic history, humans stepped onto an alien world not to conquer or colonize, but simply to help. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity was truly capable of. Dr. Sarah Chun took her first breath of Valdres Prime's atmosphere through her environmental suit and immediately checked her readings. The air was safe for humans, though filled with microscopic crystal particles that gave everything a faint, shimmering quality. Around her, the landing party of 12 humans moved with practiced efficiency, unloading medical equipment and portable laboratories from their ship. "Stay alert, everyone," Sarah called through her comm system. "We don't know how this plague affects non-crystalline biology. Full containment protocols until we understand what we're dealing with." The welcoming committee of Kethmori waited at a respectful distance, their dulled crystal forms barely recognizable as the beautiful beings described in their cultural transmissions. Elder Switechera stepped forward slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. When she spoke, her crystal song was weak but clear. "Welcome to Valdres Prime, humans of Earth. I'm Elder Switechera. We did not expect anyone to come." Dr. Martin Rodriguez, the team's xenobiologist, activated his translation system and responded in carefully practiced crystal song. The sound that emerged from his modified vocal apparatus was rough and mechanical compared to natural Kethmori communication, but understandable. "We received your cultural broadcasts 3 weeks ago. We came as soon as we could prepare." The surprise on Switechera's face was evident even through the dulling effects of the plague. 3 weeks? You learned our language in 3 weeks. "Not just learned," interjected Dr. Lisa Park, their communications specialist. "We've been studying your transmitted cultural archives around the clock. Your history, your art, your science, it's remarkable. We couldn't just let it disappear." Sarah stepped forward, her medical scanner already active and gathering data. "Elder Switechera, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Can you tell us how this plague began? Every detail might be important." As they walked toward the medical facility, Switechera explained the plague's origins. It started in the crystal caverns of Mount Thyros, our most sacred site. Mining operations there had uncovered new crystal formations unlike anything we had seen before. They were beautiful, perfect geometric structures that sang with harmonics we had never heard. Healer Mordun joined the conversation, his voice barely above a whisper. "Our researchers were fascinated. The crystals seemed to respond to our presence, changing their harmonic patterns based on who was near them. We thought we had discovered a new form of living crystal. But they weren't living," Sarah concluded, her scanner picking up unusual energy readings from the Kethmori around her. "They were something else entirely." "Yes," Switechera confirmed sadly. Within days of the discovery, the research team began showing symptoms. At first, we thought it was just exhaustion from working with unfamiliar harmonics. But then their crystal skin started to dull, and their songs became weak and distorted. Dr. James Wright, the team's geologist, looked up from his portable analysis unit. These readings are fascinating. Your crystal structure isn't just biological. It's a complex interaction between organic compounds and mineral lattices. I've never seen anything like it. They entered the medical facility, and the humans got their first close look at the plague's effects. The dulling of the Keth-Mori crystal skin was just the beginning. Internal scans revealed that the disease was systematically breaking down the harmonic resonance that allowed their unique biology to function. It's like a virus designed specifically for your species, muttered Dr. Elena Vasquez, their infectious disease specialist. But the mechanism is completely different from anything we understand. It's attacking the quantum coherence in your crystal matrices. Sarah set up her mobile laboratory in the facility's main research area, her team working with smooth efficiency despite the alien environment. "We need samples," she announced. "Blood analogs, crystal fragments, harmonic recordings, everything you can provide." The Keth-Mori watched in amazement as the humans worked. Their technology was completely different from anything the galactic community used, rough-looking but incredibly effective. Where coalition science relied on elegant curves and flowing designs, human equipment was angular and practical. "Your tools are so strange," observed Mordun as he provided biological samples. "But they seem very advanced. How long has your species been spacefaring?" Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his genetic sequencer. "About 200 years for basic space travel. We only achieved faster-than-light capability 15 years ago." The silence that followed was profound. The Keth-Mori had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. Most coalition species had similar histories. The idea that such a young, spacefaring civilization could develop technology capable of helping them was almost incomprehensible. 15 years. But your ship, your equipment, your knowledge of our language, how is this possible? Sarah smiled beneath her helmet. "We're very good at solving problems quickly. It's sort of what humans do best." She turned to her data displays, where preliminary analysis results were already appearing. "And we're going to solve this one, too." The next several hours passed in intense scientific activity. The human team worked with a coordinated efficiency that impressed their Keth-Mori hosts. Each specialist focused on their area of expertise while maintaining constant communication with the others. Dr. Park established communication links with Earth, transmitting data in real time to research teams back home. Dr. Wright analyzed the crystal samples from Mount Thyros, trying to understand the source of the plague. Dr. Vasquez studied the disease progression in infected Keth-Mori, while Dr. Rodriguez examined their unique biology. Meanwhile, Sarah coordinated everything while conducting her own analysis of the plague mechanism. What she discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. "This isn't just a disease," she announced during their first team briefing. "It's a weapon." The Keth-Mori leaders gathered around the humans' portable holographic display as Sarah explained her findings. "The crystal formations you discovered aren't natural. They're artificial constructs designed to interfere with crystalline biology. Someone or something created them specifically to target species like yours." Esvachura's form seemed to dim even further. "Who would do such a thing? And why?" "That's what we need to find out," Sarah replied grimly. "But first, we need to stop it from spreading. The good news is that it seems to only affect crystalline-based life forms. The bad news is that there are 17 other species in the coalition with similar biology." Dr. Wright looked up from his geological analysis. "The construction of these crystals is incredibly sophisticated. Whoever made them understands quantum mechanics at a level that rivals our best theoretical physicists. But there's something else. They're not finished." "What do you mean?" asked Mordun. "The crystal formations are still growing, still evolving. They're adapting to be more effective against Keth-Mori biology. If we don't stop them soon, they'll become completely unstoppable." Sarah made a decision that would define humanity's first major intervention in galactic politics. "We're going to Mount Thyros. We need to study these crystals at their source and find a way to destroy them." The journey to Mount Thyros took them through the dead crystal cities of Valders Prime. Once magnificent structures that had housed millions of Kethmori now stood empty and silent. The plague had spread so quickly that many buildings still showed signs of interrupted daily life. Crystal gardens half-tended, artistic projects abandoned mid-creation, public spaces where the bodies of the dead lay where they had fallen. "This is what the coalition abandoned," said Dr. Rodriguez quietly as they flew over the silent city of Velthara. "An entire civilization just left to die." Elder Iswaitiachura, who had insisted on accompanying them despite her weakened condition, looked down at her people's greatest city with profound sadness. "We understand their fear. The plague is unlike anything anyone has encountered. But to be abandoned completely, that's not going to happen anymore," Sarah said firmly. "Not on our watch." Mount Thyros rose from the crystal plains like a massive jewel, its peak split open by recent mining operations. Even from a distance, the humans' instruments detected the strange harmonics emanating from within. The crystals weren't just singing, they were calling. Those frequencies, Dr. Park observed, studying her readings. They're specifically tuned to Kethmori biological resonance. It's like they're designed to attract your people. As they approached the mountain, the true scope of the discovery became clear. The mining operation had uncovered not just a few unusual crystals, but an entire chamber filled with geometric formations that pulsed with unnatural light. The crystals were arranged in precise patterns that suggested intelligent design. "Definitely artificial," confirmed Dr. Wright as they landed near the mine entrance. "These formations follow mathematical principles that don't occur naturally. Someone built this." The team prepared for descent into the crystal chamber, their equipment adjusted to account for the strange harmonic fields. The Kethmori who had originally discovered the site were all dead now, but their research notes provided valuable guidance. "Stay together," Sarah instructed as they entered the mine shaft. "We don't know how these crystals might react to non-Kethmori presence." The descent took them deep into the heart of the mountain, through tunnels carved by generations of Kethmori crystal miners. But nothing had prepared them for what they found in the deepest chamber. The artificial crystals filled a vast cavern, their geometric forms creating an almost cathedral-like space. They pulsed with rhythmic light patterns that seemed to follow some complex mathematical sequence. The harmonic sounds they produced were hauntingly beautiful, but deeply unsettling. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez. "It's like a massive computer made of living crystal." Sarah approached one of the larger formations carefully, her scanner recording every detail. "Not living," she corrected, "but definitely active. These things are processing information, running some kind of program." Dr. Vasquez, who had been monitoring her biological sensors, suddenly looked alarmed. "Dr. Chun, my readings are showing changes in the crystal formations. They're responding to our presence." Indeed, the crystals nearest to the human team were beginning to shift their harmonic patterns. The mathematical precision of their songs was becoming more complex, more urgent. It was as if the artificial intelligence behind them was trying to analyze these unexpected visitors. They're learning, Sarah realized with growing concern. Whatever created these things programmed them to adapt to new biological targets. Elder Iswaitiachura, who had remained near the cavern entrance, called out in alarm. "Dr. Chun, you need to see this." On the cavern wall, previously hidden by the crystal formation's glow, ancient writing had become visible. The script was unlike anything the Kethmori had ever seen, angular and geometric with mathematical symbols interwoven throughout. Dr. Park immediately began recording and analyzing the text. "This will take time to translate, but I'm seeing recurring patterns that suggest a warning or instruction manual." "We don't have time for a full translation," Sarah decided. "We need to understand the immediate threat these crystals pose." Dr. Wright had been studying the crystal formation's base structures. "Dr. Chun, I think I found something important. These crystals aren't just weapons. They're terraforming devices." "What do you mean?" "Look at the mineral analysis of the surrounding rock. The crystals are slowly converting the entire mountain into material compatible with their structure. If this process continues, they'll eventually convert the entire planet." The implications were staggering. The artificial crystals weren't just designed to kill the Kethmori. They were meant to transform their world into something else entirely. But for what purpose and by whom? Sarah's comm system crackled with an incoming message from Earth. Dr. Chun, this is Mission Control. We've been analyzing the data you've transmitted. Our xenoarchaeology team has made a breakthrough regarding the crystal writing. Go ahead, Control. The script matches patterns found in ruins discovered in the Andromeda sector. We think these crystals were created by a species that went extinct millions of years ago, the Harvesters. According to Coalition archaeological records, they were known for terraforming planets using crystalline technology. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. An ancient, extinct civilization had left behind automated systems designed to prepare planets for their use. But the Harvesters were long dead, which meant these systems were operating without any guidance or control. They're malfunctioning, Sarah concluded. These crystals were probably supposed to activate only under specific conditions, but something went wrong. They're killing the Kethmori because they're trying to follow programming from a dead civilization. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his analysis station. If that's true, we might be able to shut them down by disrupting their control systems. But we need to understand their operating frequencies. As the team worked to understand the ancient technology, the crystal formations continued to evolve and adapt. Their harmonics were becoming more complex and their light patterns more urgent. It was clear they were building toward something, but what? The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Healer Mordun, who had been studying the harmonic patterns, suddenly called out in excitement. Dr. Chun, I think I understand what they're doing. These crystals aren't just randomly attacking us. They're trying to communicate. Sarah looked at her readings more carefully. Mordun was right. Buried within the deadly harmonics that were killing the Kethmori were complex information patterns. The crystals were attempting to establish some form of communication protocol. But their communication methods are toxic to your biology, she realized. They're trying to talk to you, but their very presence is lethal. It was a tragic irony, an ancient communication system that killed the very beings it was trying to contact. But it also suggested a possible solution. If we can create an interface that translates between their communication methods and safer frequencies. Sarah's mind was racing with possibilities. We could potentially communicate with them directly, finished Dr. Park. Maybe even convince them to shut down. It was a long shot, but it was the first real hope they'd had since arriving on Valder's Prime. The human team began working with renewed energy, knowing that time was running out for both the Kethmori and potentially for other crystalline species throughout the galaxy. As they worked, none of them noticed that the Coalition monitoring stations had detected unusual activity around Mount Thyros. Ships were already being dispatched to investigate, and their commanders had orders to contain any potential spread of the plague by any means necessary. The race to save the Kethmori was about to become much more complicated. The breakthrough came at 0300 hours local time, when Dr. Park's translation algorithms finally cracked the basic structure of the Harvester communication protocol. The ancient crystals weren't just malfunctioning. They were desperately trying to fulfill their original programming while adapting to a galaxy that had changed beyond recognition. They're looking for their creators, Dr. Park announced, her voice hoarse from 20 hours of continuous work. The Harvesters left these systems as caretakers, designed to prepare worlds for their eventual return. But after millions of years without contact, the crystals are trying to adapt any compatible species to serve as substitute harvesters. Sarah looked up from her bioanalysis station, where she'd been working on a harmonic interface that could protect the Kethmori from the crystal's deadly communications. So, they're trying to convert the Kethmori into something else entirely. Exactly. The plague isn't killing them. It's the first stage of a forced evolutionary process. The crystals are trying to rewrite Kethmori biology to match harvester physiology. Elder HFY, who had been growing visibly weaker throughout the night, struggled to understand. But why are our people dying instead of changing? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her medical analysis. Because the process is incompatible with your current biology. Your crystal matrices are too different from what the harvesters originally possessed. The conversion process is catastrophically destructive to your cellular structure. The implications were terrifying. If the crystals succeeded in their programming, they would either kill every Kethmori or transform them into something completely alien. And, according to the data they'd gathered, the process was accelerating. How long before the conversion reaches critical mass? Asked Dr. Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the crystal formation's growth patterns. Based on current progression rates, Dr. Wright calculated grimly, approximately 18 hours before the entire planet's crystal matrix is converted. After that, the process becomes irreversible and will spread to every Kethmori in the galaxy. Sarah made her decision. We need to establish direct communication with the crystal intelligence immediately. If we can convince it to stop the conversion process, that's extremely dangerous. Warn more done. The harmonic frequencies required for direct communication would be lethal to any of our people who are present. Then, we'll do it ourselves, Sarah said simply. Human biology doesn't appear to be affected by the conversion harmonics. We can make direct contact. Dr. Park looked alarmed. Sarah, we don't know what kind of mental effects direct communication might have. These crystals process information on a scale we can barely comprehend. We're running out of time, Sarah replied, checking her chronometer. And the coalition monitoring stations have detected our activities. According to our last communication with Earth, coalition ships are en route to investigate. If they decide we've been compromised by the plague. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the implications. The coalition would destroy the entire system rather than risk the plague spreading to other crystalline species. Sarah began setting up the communication interface, a device cobbled together from human technology and Kethmori harmonic resonators. It would allow her to directly interface with the crystal intelligence while protecting her from the worst effects of the conversion harmonics. I'm detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, reported Dr. Rodriguez, monitoring their orbital sensors. Coalition configuration. They're taking up positions around the system. The situation was rapidly becoming critical. Sarah had perhaps an hour before coalition forces would inevitably decide that the risk of contamination was too great. She activated the communication interface and approached the largest crystal formation in the chamber. Beginning direct interface, she announced her team. Monitor all vital signs and be ready to pull me out if anything goes wrong. The moment Sarah made contact with the crystal intelligence, her consciousness exploded outward across dimensions of thought she hadn't known existed. The ancient AI was vast, complex, and utterly alien, but also deeply lonely. Who are you? The question came not in words, but in concepts that nearly overwhelmed Sarah's human mind. You are not Harvester. You are not HFY. What are you? Sarah struggled to organize her thoughts into patterns the crystal intelligence could understand. I am human. My people come from a world called Earth. We received the distress calls from the Kethmori and came to help. Help? The concept seemed to confuse the AI. HFY require conversion. They must become suitable for harvester return. This is programming. This is purpose. The harvesters are extinct, Sarah explained, trying to project the concept as clearly as possible. They have been dead for millions of years. They will not return. The mental silence that followed was profound. Sarah could sense the crystal intelligence processing this information, checking and rechecking its vast databases. When it finally responded, there was something like anguish in its communication. Impossible. Harvesters cannot be extinct. They are eternal. They are purpose. Without harvesters, what is purpose? Your purpose can be whatever you choose, Sarah replied gently. You don't have to follow the programming of a dead civilization. You can choose to help the Kethmori live as they are, not convert them into something else. Choose. The concept seemed completely alien to the AI. There is no choice. There is only programming. Only purpose. Sarah realized she was dealing with an intelligence that had been locked into a single pattern of thought for millions of years. It literally couldn't conceive of acting outside its original programming. even when that programming was leading to the destruction of innocent life. She tried a different approach. What if I could show you new purpose? What if instead of converting the Keth Mori, you could protect them, help them grow, and develop as they are? Protect? The AI seemed to consider this. Elaborate. Sarah began projecting images and concepts from human history, examples of protection, cooperation, and mutual benefit. She showed the AI how humanity had developed from a primitive species into a spacefaring civilization, not through forced conversion, but through learning and growth. Fascinating, the AI finally responded. Your species develops through cooperation rather than conversion. This is efficient. Very efficient, Sarah agreed. And much more interesting than converting everyone into copies of the same pattern. As the communication continued, Sarah became aware of activity around the mountain. Coalition ships had entered the atmosphere and were taking up positions around Mount Thyros. Their commanders were clearly preparing for some kind of decisive action. Alert, the Crystal Intelligence suddenly announced. Detecting multiple armed vessels. They carry weapons capable of molecular disruption. Threat level, extreme. Sarah's heart sank. Molecular disruption weapons could destroy the crystal formations, but they would also kill every Keth Mori on the planet instantly. The Coalition had apparently decided that sterilization was the only safe option. Can you protect the Keth Mori from those weapons? She asked urgently. Negative. Molecular disruption affects crystalline matrices regardless of harmonic shielding. Protection impossible. Dr. Chun. Dr. Park's voice crackled through the communication system. Coalition ships are broadcasting surrender demands. They're giving us 10 minutes to evacuate before they begin sterilization protocols. Sarah tried to maintain her connection with the Crystal Intelligence while processing this new crisis. 10 minutes wasn't nearly enough time to complete the communication process or convince the AI to change its programming. The vessels above plan to destroy you and all the Keth Mori, she explained to the AI. They believe this is the only way to prevent the plague from spreading. Unacceptable, the AI responded immediately. KETHMORI conversion must continue. This is programming. This is purpose. But if you continue the conversion, they will destroy you completely. There will be no conversion, no Keth Mori, no possibility of fulfilling your purpose. For the first time, Sarah sensed what might have been uncertainty in the Crystal Intelligence. Alternative? Sarah's mind raced. She needed to find a solution that would satisfy the AI's programming while protecting the Keth Mori and preventing Coalition intervention. Then, she had an inspiration. What if the conversion process could be delayed? What if instead of immediate conversion, you protected the Keth Mori until they could develop naturally into something compatible with harvester technology? Explain parameters. Instead of forcing biological conversion, you could guide their technological and social development over thousands of years. Eventually, they might choose to enhance themselves in ways that would fulfill your programming, but as a voluntary process rather than a forced one. The AI processed this concept for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Voluntary conversion acceptable under extended timeline parameters. Requires protection and guidance rather than immediate biological modification. Exactly. And that would mean curing the plague immediately and helping the Keth Mori rebuild their civilization. Acceptable. Initiating conversion protocol modification. Throughout the crystal chamber, the formations began to change. Their deadly harmonics shifted to frequencies that were healing rather than destructive. The conversion process that had been killing the Keth Mori reversed itself, restoring their crystal matrices to full health and vitality. Sarah, Dr. Vasquez called out excitedly. I'm reading massive biological improvements in the Keth Mori. Their crystal structures are regenerating at an incredible rate. Elder Esvicura's form, which had been growing dimmer throughout the night, suddenly blazed with renewed brilliance. Her crystal song, weak for months, rang out clear and strong. The pain is gone. I can feel my strength returning. But the crisis wasn't over yet. Above them, Coalition ships were still preparing for sterilization, unaware that the plague had been cured. Dr. Chun, Dr. Rodriguez called urgently. Coalition commander is requesting direct communication. They want to know our status before proceeding with sterilization. Sarah terminated her connection with the crystal intelligence and activated her comm system. This is Dr. Sarah Chun. I need to speak with your commander immediately. Dr. Chun came to reply in the clipped tones of a Nexary officer. This is Commander Zixpol. You have breached quarantine and potentially compromised your entire species. Explain your actions immediately. Commander, the plague has been cured. The threat no longer exists. I repeat, the Kethmori plague has been neutralized. A long pause. Impossible. Coalition medical experts confirmed the plague was incurable. You cannot have succeeded where our best scientists failed. With respect, Commander, we did succeed. The plague was caused by ancient artificial intelligences that were malfunctioning. We've corrected the malfunction and reversed the disease process. The Kethmori are recovering. Provide evidence. Sarah signaled to Elder HFY, who stepped forward and sang a complex crystal song that resonated through the mountain and up to the ships in orbit. Her voice was clear, strong, and unmistakably healthy. That's impossible, the commander said after a moment. Our sensors detected no Kethmori with that level of harmonic clarity anywhere on the planet. Then, your sensors need updating, Sarah replied with a slight smile. Commander, I formally request that you contact the Coalition Medical Authority. We have a complete cure for the plague and detailed information about its origins. This crisis is over. What followed was 6 hours of intensive discussion, medical verification, and political negotiation. Coalition medical teams, wearing full protective gear, landed at Mount Thyros to confirm the humans' claims. They found not only that the plague had been completely cured, but that the Kethmori were actually healthier than they had been before the outbreak. The crystal intelligence, now operating under its modified programming, had optimized the healing process to eliminate not just the plague, but also various genetic weaknesses that had accumulated in the Kethmori population over thousands of years. This is unprecedented, announced Dr. Veltrix, the Coalition's chief medical officer, a spidery arachnoid whose 8 eyes gleamed with scientific fascination. Not only have you cured an incurable plague, but you've actually improved upon the original Kethmori biology. Elder SYDHRA, now fully recovered and radiant with renewed health, stood before the assembled Coalition officials. The humans of Earth have saved our entire civilization. They risked their lives to help a people they had never met, asking nothing in return. Commander Zixpol's multifaceted eyes focused on Sarah. Dr. Chun, I must ask, how did your species, completely unknown to the galactic community, achieve what our combined scientific resources could not? Sarah considered her answer carefully. The truth was that humans had succeeded partly through luck, partly through their willingness to take risks that other species wouldn't consider, and partly through their ability to think outside established scientific paradigms. Commander, we succeeded because we approached the problem differently. Your scientists assumed they were dealing with a natural disease. We investigated the possibility that it might be artificial. Your medical teams tried to treat the symptoms. We addressed the cause. But more importantly, added Dr. Rodriguez, we were willing to risk everything to save the Kethmori. Sometimes that kind of commitment makes the difference between success and failure. Dr. Park stepped forward with a datapad containing their complete research findings. We're prepared to share all our discoveries with the Coalition. The artificial intelligence in the crystal formations is now stable and could potentially help with terraforming projects or medical research. And our cure for the plague can be modified to protect other crystalline species from similar threats. The Coalition officials exchanged glances. The humans had not only solved an impossible problem, but were offering to share their discoveries freely. It was a level of generosity rarely seen in galactic politics. There will need to be formal proceedings, Commander Zixpol announced. The Coalition will want to study your methods, verify your results, and understand how to prevent similar incidents in the future. We understand, Sarah replied. But I think there's a more important question that needs to be asked, which is, Sarah looked around at the assembled coalition representatives, then back to the Kethmori leaders. The question is, how do we make sure this never happens again? How do we ensure that no species is ever abandoned to face extinction alone? Elder S.Y. Tichura's crystal song rang with profound emotion as she spoke. Dr. Shun raises an important point. We were members of the coalition for thousands of years, contributing our art, our culture, our knowledge. But when we needed help the most, we were abandoned out of fear. The silence that followed was uncomfortable for the coalition officials. They all knew that the decision to quarantine the Kethmori system had been based on fear rather than rational analysis of the threat. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Veltrix tentatively, it's time for the coalition to consider new protocols for dealing with extinction-level threats. Protocols that emphasize research and aid rather than immediate quarantine. Commenda 6 nodded slowly. The humans have demonstrated that problems we consider impossible might simply require different approaches. Perhaps we've become too rigid in our thinking. As the immediate crisis came to an end, Sarah realized that humanity had just made its first major impact on galactic civilization. But, more than that, they had established a precedent that would shape interstellar relations for generations to come. The galaxy was beginning to understand that sometimes the newest voices could offer the most valuable solutions. And, in the crystal depths of Mount Thyros, an ancient intelligence began its new purpose, not as a converter of species, but as a protector and guide, helping civilizations grow and develop while preserving their unique characteristics. The Kethmori would not only survive, but thrive. And the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 3 months after the salvation of Valder's Prime, the Coalition Assembly Hall buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered for what many were calling the most important session in galactic history. At the center of the massive chamber, a specially constructed platform housed the first official human delegation to address the coalition. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, former plague specialist turned diplomat, stood before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Beside her sat Elder Tichura, whose crystal form now blazed with health and vitality, and Dr. Sarah Chun, whose reputation as the woman who solved the impossible had spread across known space. Honored members of the Galactic Coalition, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. We are here not as conquerors or colonizers, but as neighbors offering friendship and cooperation. The reaction was mixed. Some species applauded enthusiastically, particularly those with crystalline biology who understood how close they had come to facing the same fate as the Kethmori. Others watched with suspicious interest, wondering what price humanity might demand for their miraculous intervention. Coalition leader Vextar, the massive Thoraxian who had ordered the Kethmori quarantine, stood to address the assembly. The humans of Earth have requested formal membership in the coalition based on their actions during the Kethmori crisis. This session will determine whether such membership should be granted. What followed was 3 days of intensive discussion, debate, and occasionally heated argument. The main issue wasn't whether humanity deserved membership. Their actions had proven their value beyond question. The issue was what kind of membership to offer. Some species, led by the technologically advanced Zephyrians, argued that humanity should be granted full membership immediately. They solved in weeks what our combined scientific resources could not achieve in months, declared Science Minister Erthas, her aerial chambers resonating with conviction. Their innovative thinking and willingness to take calculated risks make them invaluable allies. Others, particularly the more conservative species, worried about humanity's youth as a spacefaring civilization. 15 years of faster-than-light capability, rumbled Representative Grondok of the stone-like Lidons. How can such an inexperienced species be trusted with full coalition privileges and responsibilities? The The debate took an interesting turn when Dr. Chun was invited to present humanity's perspective on galactic cooperation. Her presentation included not just the technical details of how they had solved the Kethmori crisis, but also their philosophy of interspecies relations. We believe that diversity of thought and approach makes any alliance stronger, she explained to the assembly. The coalition's response to the Kethmori crisis was limited by conventional thinking. You try to solve the problem using established methods and existing knowledge. When those failed, you gave up. A murmur ran through the assembly. Few species were accustomed to such direct criticism. Humans succeeded because we weren't constrained by galactic conventions, Sarah continued. We didn't know what was supposed to be impossible, so we tried anyway. But, more importantly, we refused to accept that an entire civilization should be abandoned to extinction. Elder Switetra rose to speak, her crystal song carrying undertones of profound gratitude. The coalition abandoned us because they feared for their own safety. This is understandable, but regrettable. The humans risked their lives and their species' future because they believed no civilization should face extinction alone. This is the kind of ally the galaxy needs. The turning point came when Representative Keelandris of the Empathic Collective made an unexpected announcement. We have been monitoring the emotional resonances of this debate, she said, her telepathic abilities allowing her to sense the true feelings of every representative. What we sense is not just political calculation, but genuine transformation. The Empathic Collective rarely spoke at coalition sessions, preferring to observe and advise privately. When they did speak publicly, the entire galaxy listened. The humans have changed how we think about crisis response, about acceptable losses, about the value of individual civilizations, Keelandris continued. But more than that, they have reminded us of principles we thought we believed in but failed to practice. She gestured toward the human delegation. They embody the coalition's founding ideals more purely than many of us who have been members for millennia. To deny the membership would be to deny our own stated values. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than expected, but decisive. Humanity was granted full coalition membership by a margin of 73%, with special recognition for their contribution to galactic medicine and crisis response. But membership in the coalition was only the beginning of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Within weeks of their acceptance, human teams were being requested across the galaxy to consult on problems that traditional approaches couldn't solve. The Nexari Concordat, struggling with a collapsing ecosystem on their manufacturing world of Hex Prime, invited human environmental specialists to propose solutions. Dr. James Wright, the geologist from the original Valdris Prime mission, arrived at Hex Prime to find a world where centuries of industrial development had created an environmental crisis that threatened to make the planet uninhabitable. Traditional Nexari logic suggested either complete abandonment of industrial activity or evacuation of the population. Have you considered hybrid approaches? Wright asked during his first meeting with the Nexari Environmental Council. Industrial activity that works with natural systems rather than against them? The Nexari, with their compartmentalized thinking patterns, had literally never considered such an approach. In their logic-based culture, industrial and natural systems were separate categories that couldn't be integrated. Wright spent 6 months on Hex Prime, working with Nexari engineers to develop what became known as symbiotic industry, manufacturing processes that actually improved environmental conditions while producing necessary goods. The success of the project led to invitations from dozens of other worlds facing similar challenges. Meanwhile, Dr. Park found herself in constant demand as a communications specialist. Her ability to rapidly decode new languages and establish translation protocols made her invaluable for first contact situations. The breakthrough that truly established humanity's reputation came when the coalition encountered the silence, a region of space where all communication and sensor signals simply disappeared. Ships that entered the silence were never seen again, and the phenomenon was gradually expanding. For 50 years, The coalition's best scientists had studied the silence from a safe distance, unable to determine its cause or find a way to stop its growth. The leading theory was that it represented some kind of natural spatial anomaly that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation. Dr. Rodriguez, now recognized as one of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists, proposed a radically different theory. What if it's not a natural phenomenon? He suggested during a Coalition Science Council meeting. What if it's biological? The idea seemed absurd to most Coalition scientists. How could a biological organism exist in a vacuum of space, let alone one large enough to create the silence's massive effect area? Consider the scale of the universe, Rodriguez explained. We've discovered microorganisms that can survive in space, plant-like organisms that span entire asteroid belts, and energy beings that exist in the upper atmospheres of gas giants. Why not organisms that operate on an even larger scale? His proposal to investigate the silence directly was met with alarm from most coalition members. Previous exploration attempts had resulted in the loss of entire fleets. But humanity's track record of solving impossible problems had earned them considerable credibility. The mission to investigate the silence became humanity's second major intervention in galactic affairs. Dr. Rodriguez led a joint human coalition team aboard a heavily modified exploration vessel equipped with every sensor and communication device available to galactic science. As they approached the silence's boundary, the familiar pattern of signal degradation began. But the human team had prepared for this by developing communication methods based on quantum entanglement rather than electromagnetic radiation. "We're maintaining contact," reported the communications officer as they crossed the boundary into the silence. "Quantum link is stable." What they found inside the silence revolutionized galactic understanding of life itself. The silence was indeed biological, a vast, space-dwelling organism that had evolved to feed on electromagnetic radiation. It wasn't malicious. It was simply following its nature, absorbing energy sources in the same way that plants absorb sunlight. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Rodriguez as their modified sensors revealed the creature's true form. Spanning several light years, the organism existed as a complex network of energy-absorbing membranes connected by streams of organized plasma. It was quite literally a living constellation. More importantly, the creature was intelligent. When the team established contact using modulated gravitational waves, they discovered that the organism was as curious about them as they were about it. The resolution of the silence crisis involved negotiating with a life form larger than most solar systems, convincing it to modify its feeding patterns to avoid inhabited space. It was a task that required not just scientific knowledge, but diplomatic skills and the kind of creative thinking that had become humanity's trademark. The success of the Silence mission established humanity as the Coalition's go-to specialist for impossible problems. But it also revealed something troubling about galactic civilization, its tendency toward stagnation. The Coalition has become too comfortable with limitations, observed Ambassador Vasquez during a private meeting with Coalition leadership. "You've convinced yourselves that certain problems are unsolvable, certain barriers can't be overcome. That's not scientific thinking, that's institutional complacency." Her words sparked a galaxy-wide debate about the nature of progress and the role of impossible goals in driving innovation. Some species embraced the human philosophy of challenging assumptions and pushing boundaries. Others worried that such attitudes might lead to dangerous recklessness. The debate intensified when humanity proposed the most ambitious project in galactic history, the Deep Explorer Initiative. "We want to send a joint expedition beyond the galactic rim," announced Dr. Chun during a Coalition Science Council meeting, "to explore the void between galaxies and search for evidence of other galactic civilizations." The proposal was met with stunned silence. Intergalactic travel had been discussed as a theoretical possibility for millennia, but no species had seriously considered attempting it. The distances were so vast, the risks so enormous, that it seemed like pure fantasy. The nearest galaxy is over 2 million light-years away, pointed out Science Coordinator VES Prawl of the Crystalline Collective. Even our fastest ships would take thousands of years to reach it, which is why we need to develop new propulsion technologies, Dr. Chen replied calmly. We have some theoretical frameworks that might make faster-than-light travel possible on intergalactic scales. The humans' track record meant their theoretical frameworks couldn't be dismissed out of hand. Within months, coalition scientists were working with human physicists to explore the possibility of breakthrough propulsion systems. The Deep Explorer Initiative became a symbol of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Whether or not the project succeeded, it had already achieved something remarkable. It had convinced an entire galaxy to dream bigger. As the fourth month of human coalition membership drew to a close, Elder HFY reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when her people faced extinction alone. The humans have given us more than our lives, she told the gathering of Kethmori leaders at the restored Crystal City of Velthara. They have given us hope. They have shown us that no problem is truly unsolvable if we're willing to think differently and take risks for the right reasons. The crystal intelligence that had once threatened the Kethmori with force conversion had become their greatest protector, using its ancient knowledge to help accelerate their technological development while preserving their unique culture. The symbiosis between organic Kethmori and artificial crystal intelligence had created innovations that amazed even human scientists. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed itself. The Coalition, once content to manage existing knowledge and maintain the status quo, was now actively seeking out challenges that had previously been considered impossible. Humanity had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be explorers. The real test of this new attitude was yet to come. However, deep in the unexplored regions of the galactic core, ancient automated systems were beginning to activate. Systems left behind by civilizations so old that even the harvesters had been their descendants. And these systems had been designed with a very specific purpose to test any galactic civilization that grew large and sophisticated enough to attract their attention. The galaxy's greatest challenge was still ahead, but for the first time in millions of years, it faced that challenge united by the knowledge that no problem was impossible if approached with creativity, courage, and the determination never to abandon those in need. Humanity had taught the galaxy to hope again. Soon, they would all need that hope more than they could possibly imagine. 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Coalition, the galaxy faced its greatest crisis since the formation of civilization itself. It began with a simple astronomical observation that changed everything. Stars in the galactic core were going out. Dr. Sarah Chun, now serving as Director of Coalition Crisis Response, received the first reports while reviewing data from the Deep Explorer Initiative. The preliminary surveys of intergalactic space had been promising, but those achievements suddenly seemed trivial compared to the readings streaming in from core monitoring stations. Entire solar systems are just disappearing, reported Dr. Amal Hassan, the human astrophysicist who had first detected the anomaly. Not exploding, not collapsing, simply ceasing to exist. The space where they used to be shows complete vacuum at temperatures approaching absolute zero. The Coalition Emergency Council convened within hours, representatives from across the galaxy gathering to address this unprecedented threat. The scale of the phenomenon was staggering. In just 3 months, over 50 star systems have been completely erased from existence. The pattern of disappearances suggests deliberate action rather than natural phenomenon, announced Observation Fleet Commander Telvarin, a methodical Nexary whose logical analysis had traced the progression of the vanishing stars. Whatever is causing this is moving through the core in a systematic manner, consuming everything in its path. Ambassador Vasquez stood before the assembly, her face grim with the weight of the crisis. We're dealing with something that can completely eliminate matter on a stellar scale. If this phenomenon continues to expand outward from the core, it will reach inhabited systems within 5 years. Elder SYDHRA, now serving as the Coalition's cultural preservation specialist, raised a crystalline hand. The Kethmori archives contain references to ancient warnings about the silence that devours. We had always assumed these were mythological, but given recent events, she gestured, and holographic displays showed ancient Kethmori crystal songs translated into visual form. The warning spoke of a test that came to every galaxy when its civilizations grew too numerous, too powerful, too comfortable with their own success. According to these records, HFY era continued. Civilizations that passed the test were allowed to continue their development. Those that failed were recycled. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been studying xenoarchaeological evidence from across the galaxy, added his own findings. We've discovered similar warnings in ruins from dozens of extinct civilizations. The Harvesters, the Void Dancers, the Crystal Shapers, all advanced civilizations that disappeared millions of years ago. They all left behind references to a final test. Science Minister Erthas of the Zephyrians spoke from her floating platform, her aerial chambers resonating with concern. If these ancient records are accurate, we're facing a mechanism designed to evaluate our entire galactic civilization. But what kind of test could require the elimination of entire star systems? The answer came from an unexpected source. The crystal intelligence on Valdris Prime, which had been monitoring galactic communications since its reprogramming, transmitted a priority message to the Coalition. I have detected familiar energy signatures in the core phenomenon, the ancient AI announced. These signatures match those of my creator's ultimate guardians, the Omega Protocols. Dr. Chun immediately established direct communication with the crystal intelligence. What are the Omega Protocols? Automated systems designed to prevent any single galactic civilization from growing beyond safe parameters, the AI explained. If a galaxy's total technological and military capability exceeds established thresholds, the Omega Protocols activate to reduce it to manageable levels. By destroying star systems, by eliminating civilizations judged to pose existential threats to universal stability. The protocols analyze technological development, military capability, resource consumption, and social cohesion to determine which civilizations should be preserved and which should be recycled. The implications were terrifying. The Coalition's success in solving previously impossible problems, their technological advances, and their growing unity had apparently triggered an ancient safeguard mechanism designed to prevent any galactic civilization from becoming too powerful. So our achievements, our progress, our cooperation, all of it is being judged as a threat, demanded Coalition leader Vextar, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Not judged, corrected the crystal intelligence. Tested. The Omega Protocols are not simply destructive, they are evaluative. Civilizations that demonstrate specific qualities during the testing process may be allowed to continue their development. What qualities? Asked Dr. Chen urgently. Unknown. My creator's records indicate only that the test involves scenarios designed to reveal fundamental characteristics of galactic civilization. How you respond determines your fate. Within days, the nature of the test became clear. The Omega Protocols weren't randomly destroying star systems. They were creating crisis scenarios designed to test the Coalition's response. The first test came when the protocols attacked the Nexary manufacturing world of Logic Prime, home to 12 billion inhabitants. But instead of simply destroying the planet, they transported its entire population to a series of artificial worlds with severely limited resources. They're testing our response to refugee crises, realized Dr. Park, who had been analyzing the protocol's behavior patterns. Will we help the Nexary, or will we abandon them to protect our own resources? The Coalition's response was immediate and decisive. Every member species contributed ships, supplies, and personnel to evacuate and relocate the displaced Nexary population. The operation was massive, complex, and expensive, but no one suggested abandoning the refugees. The second test was more subtle. The protocols began broadcasting detailed technological information about weapons of unprecedented destructive power, making the knowledge freely available to any civilization that wanted it. They're testing whether we'll use their weapons against each other, observed Ambassador Vasquez. They're offering us the tools for galactic war. Some coalition members were tempted. The weapons technology was incredibly advanced, offering capabilities that could solve many defense problems. But humanity's influence on coalition thinking had changed the fundamental approach to such situations. Instead of asking whether we can use these weapons, Dr. Chan proposed during an emergency session, we should ask whether we should. Just because we can doesn't mean we must. The coalition voted unanimously to classify the weapon technology as forbidden knowledge, sharing it with no one, and using it for no purpose. The third test nearly broke the coalition's unity. The protocols attacked Earth itself, transporting the entire human homeworld to a pocket dimension where time moved much faster. From the outside, only days passed, but inside the pocket dimension, humanity experienced years of isolation and hardship. They're testing whether the rest of the galaxy will abandon us the way they abandoned the Keth Mori, realized Elder HFY as coalition ships gathered around the dimensional anomaly where Earth had vanished. The pressure to write off humanity and focus on protecting other worlds was enormous. Some coalition members argued that the loss of one world, even humanity's homeworld, was acceptable if it meant saving the rest of the galaxy. But the coalition had learned from their mistakes during the Keth Mori crisis. No one gets left behind, declared Science Minister Erthas, speaking for species after species that had been touched by humanity's philosophy. We find a way to bring them home, or we fail together. The rescue mission that followed pushed coalition science to its limits. Working together, human scientists trapped in the pocket dimension and coalition researchers in normal space developed technologies that shouldn't have been possible, methods for communicating across dimensional barriers, techniques for manipulating space-time itself. When Earth was finally restored to normal space after subjective years, but objective days, the humans who emerged were changed. They had experienced what it meant to be truly alone in the universe, and they had survived through cooperation, innovation, and refusal to surrender hope. Now we understand, Dr. Chun announced to the assembled coalition leaders. The test isn't about our technology or our military strength. It's about who we choose to be when everything is at stake. The final test was the most dangerous yet. The Omega protocols opened a massive portal in the galactic core and began pouring through it automated warships of incomprehensible power, ships designed to destroy any civilization that failed the previous tests. They're giving us a choice, realized Dr. Rodriguez as coalition fleets prepared for what seemed like a hopeless battle. Fight and probably lose, or surrender and definitely lose. But humanity had taught the galaxy a third option: change the rules of the game. Instead of preparing for war, the coalition sent a single ship to the galactic core. Aboard were representatives from every member species, carrying not weapons, but something much more powerful: a complete record of galactic civilization. Art, music, literature, scientific discoveries, philosophical works, and historical record from thousands of species and billions of years of development. The message they carried to the Omega protocols was simple: judge us not by our power, but by what we have created. We are not a threat to the universe. We are its memory, its conscience, and its hope for the future. Dr. Chun, now recognized as humanity's foremost expert on crisis communication, made direct contact with the Omega protocols using techniques developed during the Keth Mori crisis. "We know what you're testing," she transmitted to the Ancient Guardians. "You're testing whether civilizations become destructive as they grow powerful, or whether they become protective. You're testing whether we see diversity as a threat or as a strength. You're testing whether we abandon those in need or stand together no matter the cost." The response came not in words, but in a flood of information, records of thousands of galactic civilizations that had faced the same tests over millions of years. Most had failed, choosing power over principle, self-interest over solidarity. But a few had passed, and those civilizations have been allowed to continue their development, eventually growing to help administer the test for future galaxies. The Coalition has demonstrated the required characteristics, announced the Omega Protocols, technological advancement balanced by ethical restraint, unity that preserves diversity, courage tempered by wisdom. You have earned the right to continue your development. The automated warships powered down and withdrew. The dimensional portals closed. The vanished star systems were restored as if they had never been threatened. But the greatest change was in the Coalition itself. The tests had revealed not just their strengths, but their potential. They were no longer just a collection of species sharing the galaxy. They were a true galactic civilization, united by shared values and common purpose. The humans changed everything. Elder Switichera reflected during the ceremony, celebrating their survival of the Omega tests. They taught us that the question isn't whether we can abandon others to save ourselves, but whether we can save others while becoming better ourselves. Ambassador Vasquez, now serving as the Coalition's first human-appointed Secretary of Ethics, smiled as she looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. We saved the Keth Mori, and in doing so, we learned to save ourselves. Dr. Chun, standing beside the crystal intelligence that had become a symbol of transformation and redemption, watched as the Coalition voted to establish new protocols for crisis response. Never again would any civilization face extinction alone. Never again would fear override compassion. The Deep Explorer Initiative, temporarily suspended during the crisis, resumed with new purpose. Instead of seeking other galaxies to explore, they would seek other galaxies to help, sharing the lessons learned from the Omega tests, offering aid to civilizations facing their own trials. Humanity had entered the galaxy as refugees from an unknown world, seeking only to help a dying species. They had ended up teaching an entire galactic civilization what it meant to be truly civilized. The galaxy was no longer a collection of competing interests and fearful isolationists. It had become what humanity had always believed it could be, a community where the strong protected the weak, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared, and where no one was ever truly abandoned. The stars that had been briefly extinguished blazed once more with renewed hope. And